this one, you'll be able to move back a little? Okay, I'm just saying when they're going by with the coffees and the trays.
For our summit today, you have all the particulars. You know you're to sign and you're to do your envelope, $7 for your breakfast, and the basic signatures. We'll go around and introduce one another. Oh, remember that that's great. Remember that your menu. Be sure to sign for your menu so you can get your breakfast in the timely manner. They got in early. I'm very impressed. They got there early. That's right. That's a special deal. All right. And we'll start with introductions of everybody here and leave our special speakers to the last. I'm Mary Lee Barrage, co-president of the summit with Elaine Chapman.
Elaine Chapman, co-president of the summit. Introduce yourself.
Jeffrey Weiner.
Member of the
Summit and Hispanic Resource Center.
Teddy Becker, Summit, and at home on the sound with
Doreen Cashel. I'll be taking the attendance around. That's my big job for the day. So everybody help me be a success. And my good friend Keith says to say I'm no longer day labor on human rights. And so, just because of the work we do.
Okay, me both.
That's great.
I'm Janet Siegel from Four Winds Hospital.
Lynn Reichgott at Home on the Sound. Everybody, I want you to know we are open for membership and we will start our services June 1st.
Great.
So we're
We
moving
will
forward.
take your money.
And that group had a wonderful event Sunday at Richard Allen's church in Mamaroneck. It was a great beginning for At Home on the Sound in terms of its official getting ready to open. It was so well attended and beautifully run.
And this is a wonderful place to announce it because this is where we got started. So thank you,
Very
Summit.
good. We feel so proud, whatever little part we can have. You've been so good at it. Go ahead.
Kay Francis Richards, Summit.
Summit and Human Rights. Yes, Kate. Okay. Nice. Great.
I'm Richard Allen, pastor at Mamaroneck United Methodist Church, and I'm on the Summit Board.
Judy Gabron from Cancer Support Team at the Summit.
And a wonderful benefit they held just this last week. It was really beautiful.
Magnificent event for the cancer support team. Kudos to Judy. It was just great. And Mimi.
Mimi Corin, Salmon Town Report.
Lisa Center, Summit.
Judy Myers, Summit, and Westchester County Legislator.
Ernie.
Town of Mamaroneck, Ernie Odierna, councilman.
Janet Buckbinder, the Summit, Mamaroneck School Board, and Radar.
Harold Wolfson, the Summit.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And do we miss somebody down just coming in?
Yeah, sorry. Isela American, I'm the director of the Mamaroneck Cath Center.
Wonderful. One other event occurred since we last met that was very special, and that was the Washingtonville Housing yearly big event. It was a wonderful 30th anniversary. And I'm sorry Jeremy Ingpen isn't here. We could give him direct praise. But these are all groups very important to the summit. And there's John Gitlitz. We caught you. Announce yourself, please, sir.
I'm John Gitlitz, I'm an official photographer.
You are
President
and very
President of the Hispanic Resource Center, also Ann McMahon.
Yeah, that's awesome. They know that. Isn't there an opening of the Hispanic
Over here,
Resource Center
David.
this week?
Ah, yes.
Mary Lee.
On Thursday all day.
Thursday, we will be opening the new center. It's on the curb on the Mamaroneck Avenue, and the back door is on Van Rans.
623.
The official opening is at 9 o'clock in the morning with a ribbon cutting, and I believe that many of the local office holders are going to be there, and we will be open the entire day for an open house. And please come see us.
Yes, sir. Wonderful.
Also,
Very
two of our workers are being featured in a brief documentary that is going to be shown at the they're doing photography. Their work crew is participating in the filming as well at the Jacob Burns a week from Wednesday.
Oh, wow, wonderful, wonderful.
If
All
anyone's
right,
interested, I will forward the information.
all right.
If
This
anyone's
table,
interested, I gotta
forgive
get all the
us.
information.
Jim McDonald, Mamaroneck Cap Center and Hope Community Services in their show.
Ours free, Hope Community Service.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm one of the early birds, so I got my breakfast. Keith Yiser, Mamaroneck Public School, Mamaroneck High School, Summit. Good morning.
Leona Newman with Hope Community Services.
Wonderful.
And Lou.
Jeremy is coming. Here he comes. So, I think all right.
Thank you, Mary Lee.
Our program.
Our program today, as you know, is on emergency services with all of the things that have been happening locally in New York City and around the world. We certainly are tuned in to emergencies. We thought it would be important to talk about what emergency services are available here in case of an emergency. So we thought we would identify the people who can give us the best answers, and Mariana is going to introduce that panel.
Okay, my name is Mariana Boneo. I'm a volunteer-aholic. I'm going to coin in this word because I don't know how I happened to do this today. But I'm delighted to have here Ed Marians, the chairman of the board of directors of the Red Cross in Westchester County. I have Michael Liversani, director of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Ambulance District, and also heads the Citizens Emergency Response Team, CERT. That is our local response from the town and the 3 municipalities to emergency. And then we went another level to the county to Noah Goldberg is the Western County Department of Emergency Services. He's the emergency planner. So I know we had quite a few presentations on the flood. However, we wanted to look, as always, to emergency that happens not just as a flood. I remember Deborah Tamaro's 3F, fire, fanatic, and flood.
Right.
And how are we prepared? Are we prepared as individuals? Are we prepared as village, town? Are we prepared as county? What is working? What is not working? What are the challenges? And particularly, what is the chain of communication? Should, knock on wood, emergency happen, how do we respond to that? So without further ado, I'm going to lead you to it. We're going to have an opportunity for questions. So every presenter will have about 10 minutes, and then we open the floor. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, goodness.
All right. Good morning. I'm Ed Marians. I'm the chairman of the board of the American Red Cross. And what's interesting about this panel this morning is all three of us are born and raised here in Larchmont and Mamaroneck and are graduates of Mamaroneck High School. That's pretty cool. I'm not going to give the years of graduation anymore, but suffice it to say, I'm the youngest.
And you were at the summit beginning.
I was at the first meeting of the summit.
Yes.
I don't know if you all, there's some of us here. And Mrs. Siegel, it is so great to see you. I haven't seen you for a long time. Holy smoke. Senior year of high school, I think it was. But I just want to quickly define what a disaster is. A disaster is something really bad that happens to me. Right? That's what a disaster is. So when we talk about a disaster in Westchester County, we really have to focus on several, because we are really, the only thing we're not really at risk for in a really bad way is a major earthquake. Just about everything else can happen here. So, but what they really asked me to talk about today is, why do we need to talk about this subject? The reason why we need to talk about this subject is because nobody likes talking about this subject. The American Red Cross has been here for over 100 years, and we have been telling everybody, and we have failed miserably because nobody listens. So my question is, what did the environmental movement do that allowed them to convince us that we all had to do something for the environment? And we're all driving Priuses, we all have CFLs, but none of us have 2 weeks supply of food at home. Who has 2 weeks supply of food at home? Who has 2 weeks supply of water at home? Who has an extra 30 days of medicine at home? Who has a Prius? Okay, who has fluorescent light bulbs in their house? Right? Okay, so right away we got a problem. All right, the biggest thing that you have to prepare for is your own problem. Don't give to charity before you have 2 weeks of food in your house. Because,
and after that gift,
please don't be offended. Because these guys work really hard as first responders. I'm not a first responder. But if something really bad happens, you're on your own for 5 days. He's not going to come, the fire department's not going to come, the police department's not going to come. You are on your own, right? Because we have to triage. The people who need it most are going to get the help most. We're going to concentrate our resources. And Mamaroneck ain't exactly one of our biggest problems. We all live here. This is our most urgent concern, is our families. We live here, we care about you, and the reason why I'm being direct and somewhat flip is because I want to make an impression on you. I want you to go home today and make plans, because what's rolling down our highways on 95 is 400 times more dangerous than Indian Point. If you're screaming about Indian Point, your concern is misplaced. Okay? Very misplaced. I live here, I grew up here. My children are the 5th generation Westchester and Larchmont people. We've been around for a while. Trust me, that's not what's going to kill you. Okay? What you need to remember is communication. We spend all of our time talking to each other, training, thinking about every worst case scenario that can happen to us as a community, and we train for it. And I want you to rest assured, these gentlemen will not talk about themselves publicly, but I can talk about themselves. Them. Westchester County is probably the best prepared county in the nation. In the nation. New York State is probably in the top 3 of preparedness amongst states in the country. Our first responders are well trained for anything. And believe me, what we go through, it's anything. The people who aren't are us. We are woefully unprepared as individuals. Who has $500 in cash at home? Who has $1,000 in cash at home? All right? When the power goes out and it hits the fan, your credit cards aren't going to work. Okay? Credit cards, cash machines, they're not going to work for weeks.
Is there room for me?
All right? You must have at least $500 to $1,000 in cash at home and available, because you'll need money. If you have to, how many people have a Go kit? Okay, a go bag is a bag, thank you.
Well, we had, prior to 2007, I did not.
Right. All right, but the thing is, a go bag contains everything you need if you must leave your house in 10 minutes. Who lives within a mile of 95? We all live within a mile of 95. All of us. Okay? One night, it could be tonight, it could be this afternoon. They're going to come driving down our streets and say, there has been a toxic spill on 95. Go here. You have 5 minutes to leave your house. This really can happen. All right, so what do you need in that bag? Obviously, you need snacks, you need water, you need money, you need rain gear, You need a flashlight with extra batteries. You need a transistor radio. All this stuff is on paper, and you can go to our website and get this information. It's been available for 50, 100 years. You just have to do it. If you need help carrying the water, call me. I'll carry the water from your car into your house, I promise. All right? It's that urgent to me because you are my community. And this is the only chance I have to make an impression on you that this is really important. We haven't even talked about terrorism yet. So, you having fun yet? Right? This is a great job for a neurotic. So if you're a neurotic, you're going to love it. How many people do you know with food allergies? Right? All right. Guess what happens when there's a problem? What's the last thing you're going to find? Is food that's gluten-free. Okay? I don't serve gluten-free food in a shelter. I serve whatever I can get my hands on. All right? So when you come into a shelter, and none of you, please, I hope, ever have to come into a shelter, because that means you are having the absolute worst day of your life. It is horrible to walk into a shelter. And I'm just not the chairman of the board. I really do this stuff. I'm on a disaster action team, and I personally respond to 25 or 30 fires a year, and I get to help these people. And let me tell you something, fire is frightening. Make sure your smoke detectors work, right? Check them. Don't assume that your alarm company is maintaining them. Make them put a match up to the heat detector and smoke up to the smoke detector. Make sure they work. Make sure that you have a fire drill plan. Many people don't even know how to get out of their house in an emergency. When bad things are happening, we don't think real clear. Practice. The one thing you hear more than anything else is training. Training, training, training. And that's us individuals, not just these guys. We have to make sure that our kids know where to call. Because during 9/11, you could call California, but you couldn't call Queens. So you have to have an out-of-town contact. There has to be one person that everybody in your family knows to call when something bad happens. That person must live out of state. Okay? You should also have an in-state contact. And you should talk about what happens when you're at work in Manhattan and you can't get home. Okay, because that's gonna happen. It has happened in the past, it'll happen in the future. You won't be able to get home. And the other thing is your kids or your grandchildren might not be able to get home from school. So you better know what the school's plans are, what they're gonna do with your kids in an emergency. Because they have a plan, and they've practiced their plan, and their plan has been reviewed and looked at, and it's a really good plan, especially here in Mamaroneck. Last thing, drugs. I love talking about drugs. An extra 30, this is what I need you to work on. This is the issue, guys. The insurance companies will not allow us to insist that everybody has an extra month of medicine. All right, so what's going to happen in a Category 3 hurricane, which will hit us someday? We're going to have an extra, 100,000 people here from the Bronx, and
they're all coming this way.
They're all coming this way. All right? Our emergency rooms are going to be jammed full of people that don't need to be there because they don't have their medicine. All right, so what I need all of us to do is to write letters and jump up and down and scream, why can't you give us a baker's dozen? God knows we're paying enough for medicine, right? So that's a huge issue to keep people out of emergency rooms because it's so solvable. It's so solvable. And the last thing is, what do we need? We need to do this right now. Go to the supermarket and buy a few extra cans of canned goods. The food that you must have is food that does not need to be constituted with water. So if you have like 16 boxes of spaghetti at home, it's useless because you're not going to have water. So you have to be able to have comfort food. You're not on a diet when it's an emergency. Cereal bars, granola bars, cookies, 100-calorie packs. You know, go into the aisle that you never let yourself go to. All right? And live vicariously through your next emergency. But please, please, please do this.
Thank you so much. We have Mike, son, to follow up.
Okay, my name is Mike Liberzani. I'm with the town of Mamaroneck. I have a number of job titles in the town of Mamaroneck. I run the paramedic service, or the ambulance district. I'm the deputy emergency manager for the town of Mamaroneck, and I also have the pleasure of running a group that we started about 1.5 years ago called the Community Emergency Response Team. And as Mr. Marion said, you know, sort of, I'll be blunt, one of the things that we need to do is we need you to be prepared, because we're not going to be able to help everybody in an emergency. You know, the more prepared that our residents are, the more we as professional rescuers can focus on the people that need us the most. So, for instance, you know, we've come a long way in the past couple of years from the floods. We learned a lot of lessons. We've hired consultants. We've revised our plans. We've done a lot of good work. We've worked very closely with the Red Cross. We've worked hand in hand. We have shelter supplies. We've identified more than one shelter in the community. We've trained a group of local residents to operate the shelter with help of the Red Cross. We're always going to need the Red Cross's help. But the point I'm trying to make is, you know, we like to say a shelter is a lifeboat, not a cruise ship. So don't expect, you know, like fun and games and gourmet food and, you know, fluffy pillows. It's really the bare bones necessity. And the goal is the less people we have to shelter, the better it is for everybody. So as part of your planning, if people are told to either shelter in place, you know, you need that kit and you need all the supplies that Mr. Marion was speaking of. But if you're told to get out of your house, one of the best things as part of your plan that you can have is a place to go besides the shelter. You know, family and friends or out of the area, hotel out of the area if you can afford it. I mean, we will shelter anybody that needs it. But believe me, you know, the less people that we have to take care of, the better those people that really need it are going to get served, okay? There's only so much we can do in a small community. And one of the ways we've tried to branch out what we can do to help is by starting this Community Emergency Response Team. And it's a tri-municipal organization with input from the 2 villages in the town. It's run sort of through my office. I don't know why. I guess I was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Volunteer-holic.
Yeah. But so far it's a great. We have a great group of people, and we have representatives from the Heights down to the Manor. There's almost every neighborhood is represented, and we've been training this group, like I said, for over a 1.5 years to sort of supplement the police, fire, and ambulance in time of emergency. We've concentrated a lot on shelter planning. And through the help of the American Red Cross, we do have a shelter supply trailer in town where we have supplies to open a shelter, and we have the very basic supplies for about 300 people to start off with. So that's a big plus for us, so we can pre-stage that at one of our shelter locations. And anyway, the CERT team is been very helpful, and it's something that everybody should think of. It doesn't take up a lot of your time, and nobody's too young or too old to help. There's a lot of things that we need help with. And I do have a handout. I'll put, you know, I'll either run it around or leave it. It tells you what the CERT, exactly the CERT team is. And one way to think of a CERT team is sort of like a modern-day civil defense team. Okay, it's an auxiliary. It's a branch of the emergency services. We train you about preparedness, how to prepare yourself and your family. So, as an example, if if we have 100 members of the community that are prepared, their families are prepared, and they're prepared then to take care of the neighbors on each side of them, we've already expanded the amount of people that are ready and don't need help from the emergency services in a disaster. If you have neighbors that are elderly or family members that are elderly, besides the things Mr. Marion said, make sure, have a system to check in on them, especially when the power's out, or, the power's out for an extended time, or there's a heat wave and there's no power. And I'll get back to my ambulance side. With medicine, not only should you have a supply of medicine, but everyone, and do it for yourself and for your family members, should have a list of what that medicine is. And that list should be in your wallet or your purse, and it should be somewhere in your home, like the refrigerator, on the kitchen cabinet door, because if you're unable to communicate with the emergency services, paramedics get there, they look at that list of medicine, and they can tell almost everything about you. All right? It's the biggest help you can do. And on that list, you write your doctor, you write the medicine, the dosage, how many times a day, any allergies to any medicine, and that should always be on your person in some form, and it should be up to date, and it should be somewhere in your house. So we're always going to look, say, in the refrigerator, or in a kitchen cabinet, or in the bathroom medicine cabinet, but it should be somewhere prominent. So anyway, getting back to emergencies, our CERT team has been doing a lot of training, so our shelter plan has, again, with the help of the Red Cross, has really improved. We've done some shelter drills. We've identified more than one shelter in the community. We've, well, we don't have a generator at the high school. We've been working on it. We have this grant out there for 3 years, and some days they say we're getting it, and some days they say we don't, so I'm not really sure. But again, we could run a shelter without power. It's not the end of the world. We have small generators, and we've bought sort of those construction lights where we could string lights throughout the hallways. We could run some fans. Again, it's a lifeboat, not a cruise ship. Another important thing for you to be able to communicate, or us to be able to help you if you're incapacitated, is, does everybody know what ICE is on the cell phones? How many people have an ICE contact in their phone? Good, so you guys are a prepared group. But in case of emergency, ICE is an acronym for in case of emergency, and paramedics, policemen, firemen, other hospitals are sort of trained now to look, if somebody cannot speak for themselves, to look through the person's contact and look for that ICE contact, and that way we can get some of that information on you. One thing we do in our community and most communities is what we call all hazard emergencies. So we sort of prepare for emergencies as is. It doesn't really matter what the emergency is. Our planning and response to it is going to be very similar. That way we don't get caught up in, oh, it's only going to flood, it's only going to flood, and we've done everything we can for the flood, and then the truck crashes on 95. So we have some great tools in the community to be able to communicate quickly with the residents and businesses. The town of Mamaroneck and the village of Larchmont both have a very sophisticated phone system where if you live in the town of Mamaroneck or the village of Larchmont, I strongly urge everyone to go on to the respective municipal website, and right on the homepage you'll see an emergency notification banner, and you can click on that, and it lets you enter up to 3 phone numbers and 2 email addresses per household. And that way, in an emergency, we could quickly get in contact with you and give you the most up-to-date information. Because information from you to us and from us to you is really important in an emergency. We talk about evacuating and sheltering, but that truck crashes on 95 and is what's the chemical we call it? Methyl ethyl bad stuff, and it's off gassing so fast that maybe the best thing for you to do is stay in your house and close your windows and turn off your air conditioning. there might not be enough time for us to say, all right, let's everybody walk this way, because we'd all be walking through that cloud. So as part of our self-preparation, we need to be able to shelter in our house for an extended period of time. Okay? But we have some of these tools out there that we can tell you that. And we, one of our goals is to keep you informed. And I know nobody likes to get robocalls, and sometimes we get them too often, so we do try to use the system very judiciously. But there are times when we'll tell you, hey, even it's just to jog your mind to turn on the news to watch the weather, or turn on the Weather Channel. We might say, hey, a bad nor'easter is coming. Please monitor the weather and stand by for further instructions should you need it. We're very fortunate here that our coast, the coast rises very fast. So the flood, like a coastal storm, the floods aren't going to come from we have inland flooding, we do. And we do have some coastal flooding, but mostly it's the fact that those communities become islands. At the end of Homix Road, Grecian Point, Orienta, Premium Point, those places, we can't get to them. So there are times when we'll tell people to evacuate. Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned the calls from the village of Larchmont and the town. What about the village of Mamaroneck?
Right now they don't have their own system, but they do have access, and I'm sure Noah will speak to that. They have access. The county has a system that anybody can use. So there is. The thing with the town and the villages is it's just, we have the ability, the town and Larchmont, is we have the ability to continually update the information. So you can go in there as a resident or a business owner and update and keep your contact information as current as possible. And that really is helpful. So when we've done some of these townwide notifications, we get 95% effectiveness, for the whole community, which is pretty amazing in terms of these type of systems. So the fact that people can update it is a big plus for the systems that we have. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what system the village is on, but
The village.
recently, the village of Mamaroneck.
Okay.
But recently, I'm like in the flood zone
Right.
CAP center, so state called, there's overflow of subcodes. There is something in effect.
It does.
I'm
They
sure.
use the county system. Right. And these systems are great. There are limitations on how well the phone system's working. If we send one out and the county send one out and Con Ed send one out at the same time, we might blow up the phone station. But it's pretty sophisticated, and we will try to keep you guys as posted as possible. And we work very closely with our partners. Our partners are the Red Cross and the county. So, for instance, New York State is a home rule state, so everything has to start locally. So if a disaster overtakes our community, we would look to our neighbors. We would look, and during any type of major emergency, the town and the two villages are the emergency managers from those communities are constantly on the phone. We have patches, we have emergency operations centers where we can speak by any number of means, by radio, phone, cell phone, VoIP phone. We have a lot of communications, and we're always talking. So one of our goals is to try to send a consistent message, because there's nothing worse than the county executive sending a message, then the town sending a message, and the village sending a message that all tell you different things. So we really have been working hard on trying to send a consistent message and communicate to each other. So if a disaster overtakes the local area, we would look to our neighbors for help. And then if it was so widespread that our neighbors weren't able to help us, we would look to the county. And then the county, we would say, all right, well, we need this resource or these resources. And the county then would look around. They have a very good resource management team, and they would look to either other counties, other municipalities that aren't affected. So in time, if it's affected in South Shore, we might pull resources from upper northern Westchester or the Hudson side of the county. And then I'm sure Noah will speak to if the county can't provide it, we'll look to the state, and then we keep going up. And that's sort of our chain of command and our chain of communication. But we do speak a lot. We do practice that chain of communication, and that's all I can think of right now, unless people have some questions.
Yeah, we'll save the questions for
Questions
the
for
end
Ed?
so
Okay.
that we get the whole picture.
I'm sure I'll come up
Allow
with
you- Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning. My name is Noah Goldberg. I work for the Office of Emergency Management at Westchester County. I've been there for 6 years. As Mike said, I grew up in Larchmont. I'm a volunteer here. My family is here, so this is my home. I just want to talk a little bit about, I brought a little booklet. This is an emergency management booklet that the state put together. It goes over different disasters, floods, power outages, what to have in a go bag. It's a really good overview of everything that we're kind of talking about today. You can take it home. If anybody needs more or wants more for other seminars, we have cases. So just let me know. I'll be more than happy to bring them down to Mike. I'll drop them off at anyone's house. What does the county do? We don't have a fire truck with our name on it. We don't have a big, things that you see that say emergency management. We work a lot of the times behind the scenes, before, during, and after a disaster. Before an event, we're writing plans. We're going over evacuation plans. As Mike spoke to, everything is home rule. We don't make decisions for the town of Mamaroneck when they should evacuate. We'll consult with them. The administrator, the emergency management director will speak to the county. We'll have a conference call with the local municipalities. What is everybody else in the Sound Shore doing? We'll speak to the National Weather Service. We'll make a decision as a group so that a common message comes out, that we're all talking on the same page. Not one person is deciding to evacuate and someone else is deciding to stay. So we all try to keep a common platform. There were some questions about the reverse dialer, the contact systems. We have a system in the county called Geocast, which we can call the whole county right now. You can draw a big circle around the county, you can record a message, type a message, put an email, and we can hit a button. We have the ability to grab hundreds of phone lines in the county and take them, so we can call the county in a very, very short period of time. So someone was asking about the village of Mamaroneck. We have zones already built, different evacuation zones for different thresholds of flooding. Most recently, we had a chemical release at Saxony Ice about 4 or 5 months ago. We responded down to the command post, and the village administrator said we should contact a certain area. There was no need to contact the entire village of Mamaroneck because they weren't affected. So we took out a map, and with the county hazmat team, which is out of the Department of Emergency Services where I work, a plume cloud was drawn, and we said if there was a release of this chemical, this is the area that would be affected. We drew the circle. In conjunction with the mayor, we recorded a message as an awareness. This is what is going on. You're seeing fire trucks, you're seeing ambulances. Stay in your house. There is nothing to do at this time. He recorded the message, we sent it out, and it went to those residences in about 2 or 3 minutes. Go ahead.
I live 3 blocks from there, and I didn't get the message, and it was, I think there needs to be the other piece of it where we can call in and find out, or in the bigger areas, at least notified, and you could, make it a little clearer.
Okay.
I guess I was advanced not where the plume was headed, but yet 2 blocks away, so it.
There are great technology challenges. One, many people don't have landline phones anymore. Maybe they just have their cell phones. We're not, at this time, that technology can't capture a cell phone just sitting on a street corner in the area. It's something that we're looking into and seeing how we could possibly do that. Many people have gone to non-Verizon lines, maybe Cablevision. Sometimes capturing those telephones are challenging, so there are some technological challenges that we're working on. Whenever we send out a message, we have a number in there that's not 911. We don't want people calling 911 for just a question. We don't want people killing the police desk. They're going to be taking 911 calls. So we always incorporate a non-emergency number. Maybe it's going to be in an emergency operations center. Maybe it's going to be off to the side of the police desk, that they can call that number and we'll have somebody answering questions. That's a non-911 emergency. this.
Exactly, because, Carol, I did get that call.
And I didn't,
Okay,
and I'm
but,
closer to it than you.
okay, but what I'm saying is, as I got the call, it was very vague, so I did call the police department, and then they explained that there was a gas spill in the Fenimore Road area. So they said, you know, there's nothing to be concerned about right now. Now, I have a friend who lives on Bishop, who's right on the other side of the train, which is right there. They came to my house. So, you know, the lines of communication could be improved, but we say some did, but some didn't.
And that may have been, and again, I don't have the map in front of me, but literally we can draw by a pencil on a touch screen exactly what houses get it. So one house may get it on the right, and on the left, they're not going to get it. And that's done intentional on the data that we got from this current event. So we're not going to call extra people if we don't have to.
But if you're within the zone,
Yes.
Okay. You know, we have to wait for the end because we want to allow the presenters to finish with their...
No problem. All great questions. A little more about what the Department of Emergency Services does. So before an event, we're writing evacuation plans for, as Mike says, all hazards. We don't focus on just flooding. We don't focus on just the tractor trailer. We don't focus just on Indian Point. We focus on everything. I know in the news recently we've heard a lot about funding for the area, finances for Homeland Security money, which is a huge issue right now. To give a little sense of how the county works with our neighbors, there's a group called UASI, which is the Urban Area Work Group, and we're in a high tier area. So once a month, the commissioners, the directors, the county executives, the mayors meet. It's New York City, Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, and Connecticut. And they meet as a group. And they decide with the money that they get, where they're going to spend it. So many times people hear somebody in one municipality just bought something and next door they bought the same thing. One of the great things about this group is they buy equipment and they share it. So if Nassau or Suffolk is buying tremendous bulldozers for flooding or for moving sand or emergency equipment, we may buy something else and we'll share it. We don't duplicate the service. We all talk. Recently, the county just purchased tremendous generators. Not a generator you would see at your house, but a generator that could power a hospital, that could power an entire school. So we bought this equipment, having it if a municipality needed it, if a school was going to be used as a shelter and we were going to have 1,000 or 2,000 people there, we could deploy this piece of equipment to the local municipality. Like Mike said, currently Mamaroneck High School doesn't have a generator. So that area, that school has been defined as a shelter, but we have an annotation, it's going to need power if we're going to spin it up for a long period of time. So we have this equipment available. The hazmat team that's responsible for Westchester County is based out of the Department of Emergency Services at 4 Dana Road, which is on the Grasslands campus. That's another piece of equipment, another tool that the county provides to the local municipalities. Relationships with the local municipalities. On a daily basis, we're working with local municipalities, working on plans, going over what they're doing on the local level, CERT teams, volunteer groups, fire departments, ambulance corps. We're working with them constantly. We do a great deal of map work. I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but right off the Spring, in the Springbrook Parkway in Hawthorne, is a brand new big building, the State Police Barracks. It's in Hawthorne. It's called the Traffic Management Center. In that facility is the county's Emergency Operations Center. It is really a wonderful facility. It has some amazing technology in it. And during an event, that facility will be operational. So if local municipalities are calling the county for sandbags, we'll be able to fill those requests through the proper chain and be able to get the resources out. Mike spoke to our resource management. We have tremendous amounts of equipment stockpiled throughout the county. So let's say the town of Mamaroneck called up and they had some coastal flooding and they needed sandbags. We'll pull up our resource management system and we'll look that at Rye Playland we already have palletized about 4,000 sandbags. That's the closest to the town of Mamaroneck. We don't need to go to Peekskill, even though we have equipment there. We have the equipment there. We'll speak to the municipality. Do you need a truck? Do you need a forklift? Where do you want it? Do you want to come meet us? And we'll get the equipment out to the local municipality. So that's just one example of some of the equipment that we have that we can get out. Any questions so far as I'm total? Yes? The public safety answering point in the town of Mamaroneck is the town of Mamaroneck Police Department. If you pick up your landline telephone, your home telephone, it will ring at the town of Mamaroneck Police Desk or the Village of Mamaroneck or the Village of Larchmont. The only difference is if you dial from your cell phone. If you dial from your cell phone anywhere in Westchester County, 100% of the time it comes to the office at the Traffic Management Center, which is the State Police Barracks. The State Police answer all cellular 911 calls. They take the call, and they have, with the new Phase 3 Enhanced 911, in about 10 seconds, a circle is drawn to about 20 feet on a map on where that cell phone is calling from. So if you're on the post road in the town of Mamaroneck and you come upon an auto accident and you dial on your cell phone, it will go to Hawthorne, and then that call will be transferred to the local municipality in that area for police, fire, or EMS. So when utilizing a cell phone, you may have to give some information because they're not going to know instantaneously you're on the post road in the town of Mamaroneck or the Village of Mamaroneck. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Has your planning and the amount of equipment and supplies increased in recent years? And if so, what period of time and how much?
Absolutely. Over the past few years, even since the floods, we learned from every event. We train and we adjust what we do depending on obviously what has taken place. We have tremendous stockpiles now of food, MREs, and shelter equipment throughout the county. We've deployed not only in a warehouse type setting, huge amounts of equipment, we've set it out into the local communities so they have the equipment to get going. So Mike's CERT team can get a shelter going. And if the shelter gets to a much larger size, then we can bring additional supplies. So we have done a great deal with food and water and stockpiling of shelter type supplies that we could use. Just you were asking about how we adjust. We just ran an airport drill at the county airport, the county. 180 live patients, volunteer groups, Boy Scouts of America, on the tarmac at the county airport with about 18, 20 fire departments, volunteer groups that covered everything from the fire EMS response to the FBI showing up with their command truck, going through a formal investigation. What if it was a terrorist event? They went through their phase, to the Red Cross setting up a facility in the airport, dealing with families, bum rushing them, screaming, "Where are my kids?" So we covered an entire airport drill, all the aspects, I should say. Not just there's a person injured on the runway, load them in an ambulance and transport them. There was live fire, there was a police investigation. We had injects, which are, I guess you could say, fake events taking place, and we would hand cards to people and say, what would you do? What would you do if this just took place? So that just took place about two weeks ago at the county airport. It was a great drill. We do it every 2 years.
Did you film it?
Yes, we have film and their pictures.
Before we go into other questions, I want to thank you all three. This has been certainly thought-provoking. And we have a bit more time for questions, and please make them short to give everybody a little time to have this conversation. I'm sure we all have questions buzzing in our heads. Paige?
Yes.
In the past, we had had the discussion of Indian Point and what if there were a catastrophic situation there. And it was kind of decided that there's no way to evacuate this area because none of the roads could handle it. Is there any other thoughts, several years later now on to evacuate a dense area.
But the problem is, we're so far outside of the evacuation zone of Indian Point that if we were to evacuate to an Indian Point evacuation center, we'd be driving towards Indian Point from where we live, right? So there is no, I'm not trying to answer this for Noah, but there's no easy answer for that because we're so far away from it that it really would depend, that we would depend on the state and the federal government to think about where that plume is going. And, you know, our best bet might not be to evacuate. We're probably safer staying where we are. The worst thing that could happen is people that spontaneously evacuate for no reason. That's when the roads are gonna get jammed and gonna get clogged, and then the people that needed to evacuate aren't gonna be able to get out of the area they were supposed to get to because people said, oh my God, Indian Point blew up, and they all start getting on the road, okay? But what if, you know, and we have some very sophisticated computer programs. We have them at the local level, the county level, the state level. Every level gets more sophisticated, but we can model that plume pretty well. So if the wind's blowing to the northwest, why would we go anywhere? We'd be much safer here, okay? So spontaneous evacuation is actually a dangerous thing, and we would hope that we would encourage people not to do that kind of thing, and listen to the your state, local, and county officials, and whether or not you should shelter in place, do nothing, or evacuate. So that's the roads can't handle it. We know that, okay? And we've done. I know the state is doing modeling about like contraflow, and it's like just mind-boggling in this area because of the way that the roads intersect. And you know, in some parts of the country, they do contraflow evacuations where they shut down a highway and everybody goes one way. They're still studying it here, and it's just mind-boggling. And it would take like somebody on every corner, and it's almost impossible. So
it's not impossible. It would take a lot of coordination and effort.
They're working on planning it, but it's not around the corner. And so the basic answer with Indian Point is listen to your radio and phone calls, and don't evacuate unless you have a very good reason or somebody tells you to.
I have a question. What is the role of 211? I know that during the floods, we worked very closely, and there's a wealth of information through the source.
Somebody was here from the United...
During emergency.
Right? Okay.
Whenever there is an emergency and the Red Cross has an extra volume of callers that are not appropriate for that moment of immediate response, then the calls are reverted. We work very closely with the Red Cross, so those calls are sent to 211. So we can take those calls for people that want to volunteer, that want to donate, or they're just asking other questions that at that time when everybody wants to do something, they overwhelm the response lines. And also, after the disaster, the 211 is very important for the recovery stage. So that's how we work together.
Just to touch on the recovery stage that I just want to briefly touch on. Right now, the county is in the process of collecting the data from the last storm. We were given a declaration, meaning we met a threshold in Westchester County for our most recent storm. It was a municipal declaration, meaning municipalities that incurred overtime, damages to equipment, damages to infrastructure. We are compiling that data from the municipalities and sending it to the state and the feds, and hopefully that money will reimburse. Unlike the floods that we had last time, where we had individual homeowners assistance, we did not meet the threshold this time on the most recent storm. So in order to meet individual homeowners damage, you have to have 100 homes nearly destroyed or severely damaged to meet the threshold. So the most recent storm, we didn't meet that, but we did meet the declaration for municipalities. It fell on a weekend. There were tree crews out for days on end, working, cleaning up all the debris. That money that the municipalities laid out hopefully will be reimbursed through the state. That's something that we're currently working on, compiling the data from the federal.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to real quickly say that the service that the United Way provides, and everybody knows I'm not objective, I love the United Way. The 211 service is absolutely vital to Westchester County, and the only way it gets paid for is if we donate to the United Way. Now I'm supposed to ask for money for the Red Cross, and I have really been chafing, but I'm not going to say that. What's important is our community, that we stand behind 211, because thousands of people are going to rely on it. Our job after a flood at the Red Cross is we've got to do the paperwork, we've got to find new apartments, we've got to pay first month and last month's rent, we've got to buy them clothes, we've got to buy them food. But without 211, we don't know who they are. So we really work together. And the other thing, I'm sorry, one last thing is we have to have workforce housing in Westchester, because if all of our firemen and all of our police departments have to live in Rockland County and commute, guess what? In an emergency, we're not going to have firemen, we're not going to have policemen, because they're not going to be able to get here. When I was a kid, our cops grew up here with us, and we need that more. So now, I'm sorry.
When I was a kid, you took a ferry.
I want to thank all of you for a thought-provoking, because there were very many things I hadn't thought about. But one of the points you brought up was the possibility of
one of the things you brought up was the potentiality for emergency rooms in hospitals being overwhelmed. But you didn't talk about how the hospitals are being brought into this network of emergency planning and emergency response. I wonder if you could talk a little bit for a second about that.
The hospitals have a group in Westchester County. Once a month they meet, just to go into some equipment that we already have. We have a hotline phone system in every emergency room in Westchester County. If an emergency room at 2 o'clock in the morning, something happened in the city of Yonkers, and they are just inundated, they can pick up this phone. They have every emergency room in Westchester County Police, and the 911 Center at 4 Dana Road, all in about 2.5 seconds. They can give the data. This is what's going on. We just had a bus accident on Nepperhen Avenue in the city of Yonkers. We're going to have 30 patients here. Prepare for patients. So right off the bat, there is a link of communication that all the hospitals have at a moment's notice. In a planning process, there is a tremendous amount of work currently being done with setting up additional, if you will, ER rooms outside of a hospital, mass triage. They have trailers, they have equipment at these hospitals to be able to do mass decontamination. If people are showing up at a hospital that are contaminated in chemicals, we don't want them running into the emergency room, contaminating everybody that's already in there or the hospital. So they will do decontamination outside of the hospital, clean them off, then bring them in if they have a medical condition, if they need to be treated. Currently, the county is purchasing a mobile hospital that we're going to be able to set up, maybe not even near a hospital, maybe we need to set it up in a field somewhere, away from a hospital. It's a piece of equipment that we're also getting.
And we also just, as an FYI, only because it came into committee yesterday, are purchasing with Homeland Security money a radiological testing unit that will be housed up in Westchester Medical Center.
But surge capacity is an interesting thing in emergency medicine, and there's no great answer because the hospitals are downsizing and closing, and so surge capacity is there are we can set up a field hospital, but that's not going to be in the it's going to take a while to get that stuff going. So surge capacity is a tough issue.
So can you bring groups like Open Door in? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
Open Door can come in. Groups like Open Door.
Community.
Yeah, they would definitely be part of.
So Paige and Ernie, Paige's
right.
Yes, go ahead. Yes. Oh, sorry, I'm the competent person. Sorry.
You mentioned having a go bag. How often would you recommend updating it? I discovered everything was outdated.
Yeah. You should, the best time of year to do anything like changing your smoke detector batteries, spring ahead and fall back. If you do your checking, it's easy to remember. and it comes every time the same, you know, so use those 2 days as your launch points to check and replace things.
We say check your clock, check your batteries, right?
When the town was planning its emergency response, and we set up the thing that Mike is now the head of, we were contemplating where to put the center, where we were going to send people, and thinking that the high school was a likely place. And one of the thoughts was to use the Homix ice rink, but it's in a floodplain, so that might not be available. And we figured the high school, where we had assumed a big generator was going to be located, but unbeknownst to us, and today is the right day to talk about it, it was removed from the budget. And today is budget vote day, I think, in the school, so just remind them about that. But all of a sudden it was discovered that there was no generator. And now I think they put in a connection, at least. I'm not sure if it's in. I mean, just because they tell us that they're gonna, it's not necessarily there. So if a portable generator shows up, there's no place to plug it in.
There's no transfer switch.
That's right. So
we have a workaround. We definitely have thought about these things. We plan through these obstacles, and you know, we could overcome some of that. I mean, would it be nice to have a full generation there? It would be great, yes.
People have personal generators now. From 4 or 5 years ago, you realize you can't count on power coming back, and the Con Ed reimbursement of $100 or whatever it is for your refrigerator doesn't quite hack it. So part of that, I just wanted to mention, great to have a generator, but you need fuel. And if the last time you put fuel in was 3 or 4 years ago, tell you what, you ain't going to start that generator. So it's got to have been fresh gas and either drained or preserved with the stabilizer. So don't assume because you have a generator you're ready to go. I needed my son to come and give it a good yank to get it going, and that's not always available.
And that's a whole other subject already about generator safety. I mean, you have to make sure that the generator is outside of your house, that it's properly connected to your the appliances that you hook it up to. You can't just take the generator and plug it into an outlet and then backfeed your whole house, because you will blow up your house, and you'll also fry the Con Ed guy out on the telephone pole trying to fix the thing.
What we did with our generator, by the way, being in the uninterruptible power system supply business, I plugged it into my UPS.
Right.
It normally runs my computers.
Right.
So I was able to run electronic equipment off it safely. Because otherwise the generators put out spikes and transients and blows your TV.
An important thing to remember is we live in a new technological age, remember, where everybody pushes costs to us, right? We pay for everything now. That's technology. So your Verizon phone system is garbage an hour after the light goes out. If you don't have a replacement battery for your Verizon VIOS system, you got about one phone call worth of juice. So you have to have extra batteries for your VIOS. It uses the same battery, thankfully, as your alarm systems. So you can go to Radio Shack and inexpensively purchase 1 or 2. The important thing is, if you do have a generator at home, to make sure your VIOS system is plugged into that. And the other thing you should know is that you can power your VIOS system through your car battery, because it's a 12-volt system, so you can rig away, but I'm not going to tell you how because I'm not an electrician.
Yeah, you can.
Wow.
So,
and one thing we also like to tell people is that I don't think any of us mentioned it, but it's really important that everybody have a regular old-fashioned corded phone in their house. I mean, if you don't have FiOS, or if you have a regular phone system, because everybody these days has these cordless phones, and after a couple hours they're going to be dead. So it's really, really important so we can communicate with you and you can call us, is you have at least somewhere in your house, even if it's not plugged in, know where you have one of the old-fashioned just corded phones.
Yeah. While we're talking about phones, I heard that a lot of the cell phone towers don't have battery backups. Where are we in terms of having that battery backup in our region?
That's nothing to do with us. That's the telecommunications industries, and
there's no way.
There's no way.
No way.
They'll last for a little while, but not. They don't have generators at all. They'll have batteries. They don't have generators. Right. So they're only going to last as long as the battery's going to last, which might be an hour or 2 hours, depending on the usage.
Depending on the volume of calls. Right. And when the light goes out, everybody wants to call Aunt Tilda. you know, so it won't last long.
It's not going to last. And don't expect it to. I mean, that shouldn't be part of your emergency planning. Your cell phone should not always be part of your emergency plan.
Doreen? Very naive question. If you have Verizon, does that mean you have the system?
No. No. It would have to be Verizon Fios. If you just have plain old telephone service, you're lucky.
But you should have that corded phone.
We have one of those crank radios,
Great.
which is a fabulous
Great.
idea. And I just saw an ad recently that they will, and I don't know if it's successful, but will charge your cell phone.
Yes, they will.
Because I had one with every possible little attachment, which they seem to change every 3 months, and none of them fit. But I think there seems to be more uniformity for the connectors now. But I'd also like to just reiterate something that you said, Mike, about the emergency generators that individuals are using. They're extremely dangerous and they're scary. And if you have one, it's almost like I would urge them to get a professional electrician to say, okay, in case of an emergency, this is what you do. Because people have been killed.
Oh, they've been killed because not just electrocuted, but they leave it they run it in their garage or next to an open window, and then they die of carbon monoxide poisoning. There's so many dangers to a portable generator.
As an engineer, I will tell you that there is absolutely no workaround for stupidity. and most people die because they do really stupid things. So, I mean, common sense is really use your common sense, because that's what's going to save you in an emergency. Don't drive through water that's moving.
We didn't even get to that
Please,
point.
we didn't. I mean, we could go on and on.
We could talk for hours about
but don't use candles if there's a power outage. Please don't use candles. Why?
Flashlights.
Because they cause fires.
I don't allow. I've been a fireman for 25 years. I've been a fire chief. I asked my wife. She gets so mad at me, but I do not let candles in my house. I don't even let them have them in the house. Get them out.
A quick question. You were talking about these booklets that if you don't have them, Marianne Luna has a few more. They have a lot of information that we've been discussing. They're handouts for the Red Cross and also for you brought some handouts for
I just talked about the CERT. Yeah, there's some, we want to talk about some of those. There's some great websites that you can put in your, there's ready.gov, which is a great one. It has very concise information for some of the things we've been talking about. And then all of, the American Red Cross, Westchester County, the town of Mamaroneck, all those websites have plenty of emergency information on them. But ready.gov is probably one, and the American Red Cross ones are probably some of the most concise references.
My question was, you referred in the beginning to the what if conversation that we need to have at home. Is there also material for children?
Yes.
That is accessible, what if, so that you can rehearse in case of an emergency, because sometimes, and we've all been there, you run to the supermarket, whatever, and you have youngsters, not too young, don't break the law, but that need to know what to do, and their common sense is still in.
We do a workshop. The Red Cross has a workshop that we do with kids. Just last week, I trained a group of Boy Scouts up in Yorktown. There's lots of things for kids to make this non-frightening. The reason why we're here is not to frighten you, because this knowledge empowers you. You have information now that you can act on. So that's what we want you to do. There's nothing to be frightened about, because you all are expert at dealing with life's challenges because you're still here. So we want you to stay here.
But we've learned how frightening it can be.
Harold, a question?
I'd like to explore your wish lists. If $1 million grant were suddenly available to each of you for emergency purposes, what would you do with it?
I would create food. I would create food and food areas where we could quickly and easily distribute food to low-income people where they live. Fresh food and water in some kind of secure container at the projects in New Rochelle on the Larchmont line. On Richbell Road. Where there's a large number of people who are going to get hungry at the same time.
You're still thinking. Which one to start?
Ching. I think in terms of emergency preparedness, I think that I would like to see more in the way of shelter supplies in terms of, again, some maybe food and water that we don't have. We have blankets and cots that are available locally, but we don't have MREs and tons of supplies. I'd also like to see some improved radio communications for our community so that we could integrate some of these volunteers, the CERT team, and some of the Red Cross and any other assets that we bring in. We don't have enough radio equipment in our community to communicate effectively with all the support we would get and we have now. So that would be my two things.
Mike, you had time. No, I'm sorry.
Kind of along the lines of what Ed said would be a food pantry or a food warehouse.
You get all the money. The money goes from the federal government to the state to the county, and that's where it stops. That's why we don't get any money.
Would be a food warehouse, a fixed location that we could keep large amounts so that in an event we would have a great deal more stockpile on hand. That's going to be one of the biggest challenges here during an event, during whether it's a flood. We're going to be cut off from some of our main delivery points, roadways, infrastructures, airports. We will have to be self-sufficient. So food warehouse would be something.
It all boils down to maintaining the rule of law during an emergency. And the only way that we can maintain the rule of law in a community is by working together and keeping people fed and informed and watered. That's the key to this, and that's what we all have to work on.
Is emergency independent from different administrations? Because, with all the cuts that we see with the economy that we're having, sometimes it's thought, oh, well, we have enough. There's never enough. We never know. It's around the corner and it could happen tomorrow. And what happens? So how is that provision?
Well, that's why we need the American Red Cross, because when an emergency happens in Westchester, we have to pay for it unless the American Red Cross is involved, and then we divide it among 250 million Americans. The American Red Cross gets no money from the government. We rely on donations. America is the most giving, generous country on the planet. What we did for Haiti is unbelievable. There's not a country in the world that can come close. As individuals, not as countries, we're going to need to rely on that same funding mechanism in an emergency here, because that's the only way it happens.
Okay. Any other questions? Mimi.
You mentioned earlier the ICD having the ice on your cell phone, and it occurred to me, mine is directed to my home. What good does that do? I'm assuming that something happens to me out elsewhere, but if it's an area emergency, then it's really useless. Shouldn't it be directed?
You can have more than one ice. You can have ice, husband, ice daughter, ice uncle. You could divide that up.
Ice doctor.
Right, ice doctor. A lot of people do that, and so you can have more than one. Ice comma. Ice is like the last name in your directory, and then comma whatever the description of that person is. So there's ways around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of us left, but a lot of us do volunteer at the Hope Community Kitchen in New Rochelle, and I'm sure Hispanic Resource Center has a lot of people, and the CAP Center. What would you recommend for people that use those, that we could do for them to have them somehow prepared, and they won't lose the kids, so they won't do it,
Well, we coordinate. We learned a lot from the last flood. Actually, the Red Cross came right into our office and trained us, because this was the first emergency. So the flood really changed, and as former director, the flood really changed the way we operate, because it brought a whole new spectrum of emergency and case management. So we had training from the Red Cross, and we had, community meetings where all local organizations used to come and discuss, and they were held at St. Thomas Church that has functioned as a shelter, but then it moved to the high school. So we work together. It's always hard, because people rush to do stuff, Emergency happens and everybody gets out in the street and starts doing stuff, and I call it the monster. Because we need to wait a little bit, and I know it urges, we feel like we want to do something because it's horrible what we see. But we have to communicate, with the local authorities, with the Red Cross, and stay put for a bit before we rush into action, because then it's more work.
I know, but you still didn't really answer the question. I'm saying, would you recommend us putting some little kits together and give them to the people?
Yes.
And have it available for them?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you should have a stockpile of them. I think you should give them out in advance.
These every organization should have.
Yeah.
They have them in the country.
A brochure, some cereal bars, a box of cereal bars for each person. So if it's a family of 4, throw in 4 boxes. You can live for a long time on 4 boxes of cereal bars as long as you have fresh water. So fresh water really becomes the issue. And the big issue with fresh water is, where do you put it? If you live in a 1-room apartment with 15 guys, and it's happening, there are 15 people living in 1-room apartments in Mamaroneck right now, where are you going to put the water? So, there's a lot of stuff we got to do to make people safe. And it takes a lot of will.
Keith, you were quiet, eh?
I had said I wasn't going to speak on the flood because we always talk about it and everything else. And you're very, very, very much on point with that. But I also want to say thank you to the Red Cross, because when we did get hit, you guys came with the truckloads of water, because that was the very first, it's actually the first act of survival, water. And you came with it, with truckloads of water. Because we didn't realize that when you can't turn a faucet, the only water you're going to get is that brook and that nasty water. So very much thank you. That's all.
We want to thank Mariana, Keith, those who worked on this program, and all of our... I'm sorry, Carolyn, thank you, sorry. And all of our presenters were really outstanding. And Judy, thank you, sorry. Don't mean to leave anyone out. It was an outstanding and very provocative presentation. It left a lot of us, I think, with a lot to think about and to act on. And so I want to thank all of you for your help in presentation, and all of you for attending today. Thank you very much. Don't forget to vote.
That's what those are made you think about it.
It was great to meet you.
That was fun. Yes. I did say update.